You're on the couch, mid-sentence in a phone call, when a cat lands on your chest, uninvited. Nobody trained her to do this. 40 seconds later, you're up, refilling a bowl that was already a third full. Behind her eyes sit 10,000 years of ancestry, tracing back to one place, the Fertile Crescent. And by the geneticist's own account, she never actually agreed to any of this. Dogs learn to read your face and come when called. Cats mostly learned that you'll open a can if they stare at you long enough. So here's the real question. If evolution rewards animals that adapt to their environment, why didn't 10,000 years inside human houses ever really tame the cat? Why is the one predator we let sleep on the pillow still, essentially, running the terms of the arrangement? Right now, in houses everywhere, furniture gets rearranged around a cat's favorite spot, and doors get left cracked open on a schedule that isn't the humans. That's the pattern this video is actually about. Start with the timeline, because it's older than most people assume. For decades, ancient Egypt got the credit for domesticating cats first, thanks to its cat mummies and a religious cult built around the goddess Bastet. Then, in 2004, archaeologist Jean-Denis Fignet excavated a Neolithic grave at Chilorakambos, on the island of Cyprus, and rewrote that history in a single afternoon of digging. Buried just 40 centimeters from a human skeleton lay the complete, unbutchered remains of an 8-month-old cat. The grave was 9,500 years old, more than 5,000 years before Egypt ever mummified one. Cyprus has no native wildcats. Someone had to load this animal onto a boat on purpose and bring it along the whole way. That's not livestock. That's not simple pest control. That's a relationship somebody thought was worth the trip. So if humans were bringing cats along that early, and that deliberately, why does the story of their domestication look nothing like the story of the dogs? Everyone assumes the human-cat relationship went the way every other domestication story goes. Humans picked the friendliest animals, bred them, shaped them across generations. The truth is closer to the opposite. Cats appear to have domesticated themselves. In 2007, geneticist Carlos Driscoll and a team of researchers sequenced DNA from 979 wild and domestic cats across 5 continents. The pattern pointed to a single location, the Near East, right where humans were first storing surplus grain. Grain draws rodents. Rodents draw wildcats. And unlike wolves, which many researchers believe were actively pulled into cooperative hunting with early humans, the wild cats that became house cats seem to have simply moved into the food supply and stayed. Nobody bred them for it, at least not at first. They recruited themselves, and selective breeding caught up centuries later. That explains how cats got in the door. It doesn't explain how they've stayed so thoroughly in charge of it ever since. In 2009, behavioral ecologist Karen McComb at the University of Sussex recorded 10 cats purring in 2 situations: relaxed and actively demanding food. Buried inside the second type of purr, layered underneath the normal low rumble, was a high-frequency cry, acoustically close to the pitch of a distressed human infant. When McComb played both versions for volunteers, including people who had never owned a cat, roughly 75% rated the food-demanding purr as more urgent and more unpleasant than the relaxed one. The cats weren't just asking. They were borrowing the sound the human brain is wired, at a fairly basic level, to respond to and act on. Everyone assumes a purr is a universal signal of contentment, the sound of an animal that's relaxed and asking for nothing. Actually, cats appear to have evolved a second, weaponized version of that exact same sound, tuned specifically to get a human out of bed at 6 in the morning. That kind of leverage isn't new, and it hasn't always stayed gentle. According to the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, who claimed to have witnessed it firsthand, a Roman visitor to Egypt accidentally killed a cat around 60 BCE. A mob gathered at his house within hours. Officials sent by King Ptolemy XII tried to intervene. So did Egypt's fear of angering Rome, its most powerful ally at the time. Neither mattered. The man was killed anyway. 10,000 years in, and the relationship had already curdled into something closer to worship, backed by force. But there's a stranger example than sound, or superstition. This one doesn't stop at behavior. It reaches directly into the brain of another species entirely. Beginning in the late 1990s, parasitologist Joanne Webster and zoologist Manuel Berdoy at Oxford University tracked rats infected with Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite that can only reproduce sexually inside a cat's intestine. Healthy rats avoid the smell of cat urine instinctively. It's one of the oldest fear responses wired into the rodent brain. Infected rats didn't. In Berdoy and Webster's trials, the infected rats lost that fear almost entirely, and some were measurably drawn toward a scent that, in the wild, should have meant death. The parasite doesn't just survive inside a rat. It appears to rewire the rat's fear circuitry on behalf of a cat that hasn't even shown up yet. And this isn't some rare exotic organism sitting off in a lab somewhere. Health agencies estimate it currently lives inside roughly a third of the human population worldwide, mostly without symptoms. Everyone assumes free will stops firmly at the species line, that whatever's happening inside your head is fully, privately yours. Actually, a single-celled organism with no brain of its own can override that wiring in a rodent without asking permission first. So does any of that reach us? Some researchers, including parasitologist Jaroslav Fleger at Charles University in Prague, have spent decades trying to find out, linking toxoplasma infection in humans to subtle shifts in personality and risk-taking. It's one of the more contested corners of the field. Later, larger studies have found the effects in humans to be far weaker, or absent entirely compared to what shows up in rats. The honest answer is that nobody fully knows yet, but the question itself is enough to sit with for a second. So which one is the real reason cats never fully bend to us? The self-selected move into human settlements, the sound engineered to hijack a nursing instinct, a cult that once killed for them, or a parasite that can quietly edit fear itself. Probably all of it, compounding across 10,000 years. But there's a deeper number sitting underneath all of it. In 2014, a genome sequencing team led by Wesley Warren at Washington University in St. Louis published the first full domestic cat genome and compared it directly against the wild cats. Dogs, measured against wolves, carry dramatic genetic rewiring, thousands of generations of deliberate breeding baked directly into their DNA, visible in the genome itself. Cats barely moved. Warren's own team summarized it plainly. Cats are, genetically, still only semi-domesticated. 10,000 years, and the species never finished the process. Or maybe it was never intended to. Which brings it back to the couch. The phone call. The cat who never asked before landing on your chest. She isn't broken. She isn't unfinished by accident. She is doing, 10,000 years later, almost exactly what her wild ancestors did the day they first walked toward a Fertile Crescent grain store instead of away from it, deciding entirely on her own terms that the arrangement was worth staying for. Evolution didn't fail to tame the cat. It simply never needed to. You were never the one training the animal in your house. You were the resource it decided, a very long time ago, was worth keeping.